my hero, someone who's very influential in your life, clearly both of our lives, is the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali, on his what would have been here. We're just going to ask you a few questions, and we go from there. This is modern-day technology.
Great. Looking forward to it. Can you see this? I didn't know if you could see the Hall of Fame shirt.
Yeah, if you go this way, exactly, exactly.
All right.
The only photographer in the Boxing Hall of Fame.
Well, and that is, and I'm quite serious. As I think you know, I like to tell people I've never met a modest photographer. If a photographer is modest, he isn't very good.
That's right. And I'm going to call you on that in a second. So I want to ask you. I want to ask you first, Neil. Can you take us through the very first time that you met Muhammad?
I just wanted to say that without Ali, there's no way on earth I would be in the Boxing Hall of Fame. So following him for 50 years was the easiest guarantee.
Absolutely.
Of the kind of career I had.
Absolutely. You're also quite good. Don't be too modest. But can you take us?
Ali, you know, I was working for Sports Illustrated when Ali began his professional career. I wish I'd been at the Rome Olympics. I didn't see him at 60. I watched him on television a couple of times. I actually saw Ali in 1961 when Patterson fought Sonny Liston. First fight in Chicago. I was going to the weigh-in to photograph the weigh-in, and this loudmouth, I didn't even know who he was about 3 people ahead of me on the escalator going up to the ballroom where the weigh-in was going to be, talking about how he could beat both of them on any night together, same night. And that's the first time I ever saw Ali. But I didn't meet Ali. You know, photographers, unlike writers that have to talk to a subject and get to know them, because I photographed many subjects that I never so much as had a word of conversation or shook hands with. In this case, I photographed Ali at the Doug Jones fight in 1963. I photographed him in Miami when he fought Sonny Liston. But I never met Ali until 1966, the first time he came into the studio to pose cover, in which case it was one-on-one, me and Ali, and a small entourage that used to sort of follow him to things like that, you know. And that's the first time I met Ali, and you know, and I fell in love with him that night. You couldn't miss.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I don't know if I ever knew about that escalator story. This young, brash kid who was
it was suddenly this voice is, I'm the greatest. I can beat both of these guys in one night. What's the big deal about Patterson and Liston? You know, and that was my first introduction to Ali. And
what a genius!
The studio session was pretty special. I mean, I was 22 years old, I think, and I've got the heavyweight champion of the world in my studio posing for me, and that's when I realized that you had to follow this guy. I mean, all you had to do was pitch your wagon to his parade, and you were going to be a hero because he was so available and such a easy subject to work with. To say nothing of the fact that he was movie star handsome, and you know, and I knew it, and he liked the camera. You know,
he was articulate. He was.
I mean, liking the camera is something you don't have to be. By the way, he was so good looking, and so, like I say, he was movie star good looking. My second favorite subject, I always tell people, was the former mayor of New York, Ed Koch, who was overweight. He was sort of stooped over a little. He was anything but handsome. But just like Ali, you couldn't take a bad picture of the guy. And I told Koch that. I did a Time magazine cover on Koch, and we became friends. And he loved to tell people, Neil Leifert says, I'm as good looking as Muhammad Ali.
Right. Well, the other thing about Muhammad was he was whooping people and he wasn't losing. But the other thing, what I want to ask you is, you've shot multiple sports. I mean, you're a filmmaker. You've not just shot sports, let's be honest, but you've always maintained that boxing was your favorite sport to shoot. Why is that?
Well, it's easy, and I'm going to surprise you with the answer. They're the nicest people I work with. Everyone wants to work with nice people. Don't misunderstand me. There are some wonderful basketball players and baseball players and football players. But overall, they're not very pleasant, and they don't really give you what Ali did. You know, Ali, to start with Ali, and pretty much Joe Frazier, George Foreman. Where do you find a character like Don King, okay?
No,
or
exactly.
Bob Arum for that
No,
matter.
exactly.
Oscar De La Hoya, you can go right. I mean, I photographed Anthony Joshua last year, and I post. You just don't meet people like that, and they're
Yeah.
this group to be around. And here are a bunch of athletes that come from poor backgrounds, most of them. A good percentage, certainly the ones I shot early on in my career, uneducated. They were always as tough and rough, and certainly the language in a locker room and boxes could be like a Teamsters
Yeah.
competition.
Yeah.
But the minute you bring a lady into the locker room, they're gentlemen. Suddenly it's yes, ma'am, hi, ma'am.
Were you? Did you bring in ladies inside any time
Oh,
for
with
shoots?
Ali, well, you always brought ladies in to see Ali. He
Yeah.
loved
Smart.
that. He loved the
Smart
lady.
move.
Yeah.
With Neil, with all these casting characters that you've shot, you mentioned Joshua, you have the Mike Tysons of the world, you have the Evander Holyfields of the world, the De La Hoyas, Pattersons, Listons. You always maintain that Muhammad was your favorite subject, and what made
Oh,
him the best subject? What made him the best subject?
but since I brought Joshua up and you just mentioned it, I was in Saudi Arabia last December when he fought Ruiz, the second fight, win title back. The morning after the fight, we're all in the same hotel. He's just won the heavyweight championship of the world. He comes over to my table, sits down to have some tea while we were having breakfast. Why? He's a huge Muhammad Ali fan and knew I'd photographed Ali. He wanted to hear some stories about Ali,
Of course.
heavyweight champion, the current heavyweight champion of the world.
Of course.
Uh, you know, I, listen, Ali. Remember, I started working with him when I was a young photographer. I didn't have the success I would have later in my career. I was beginning to get successful, but I always wanted my boss to think I did a great job.
Hmm.
And we all work for somebody, and Muhammad made a hero out of every single way. He never saw a microphone he didn't like, so you didn't have to be Howard Cosell to get a great interview with Muhammad. You didn't have to be George Plimpton to get a great interview, and you didn't have to be Gordon Park, Howard Bingham, or Neil Lyford to get great pictures of him. The guy was always available. So initially, my fondness for Ali was he made me look good. I wanted to, I'd come back to the office and with my film, and my editor would look at it and think, geez, this guy life is really good. Well, let me tell you something. If you missed with Ali, whether you were a writer, a television interviewer, commentator, if you missed with Ali, you just weren't very good, because he had a real good sense to give you some. Listen, he would BS so many of the writers. I watched him. He'd put his arm around the writer, big writer, important writer, and he'd whisper, "I'm giving you an exclusive."
Make
Well,
him feel like
he's
$1,000,000.
given the same exclusive to three other writers.
Of course. Genius guy.
He,
Uh,
he was a
well,
genius.
So, what us fans, all want to know about, and you've told the story a million times, but I want to talk about the most iconic, in my opinion, shot of all time, which is, of course, the Ali over Liston, which, not just my opinion, Sports Illustrated put it on the cover with the 100 greatest sports photos of all time. You and I, we talked about this at the beginning. You and I talked about this, and I maintain it as the most iconic sports shot. You have and in many of interviews you have said, look, it's all luck, kind of playing this humble, modest game. And you've even said you don't even know if it's your best photo. I want for the fans on Ali's birthday to come out here and now, admit that it's not just luck, that there was some
Well,
skill involved,
well,
and tell us how you got
I
this shot.
wish I could, but luck is such. Look, good photographers, when they get lucky, they don't miss. And obviously, I didn't miss that night.
Yeah.
But I'll give you the perfect example of why. We're going to talk about my Ali Williams picture, which I think is my best picture. My Ali Liston picture is absolutely my best known picture, and I am very, very proud of it. Believe me, it changed my life and my career. We probably wouldn't be sitting here doing this interview were it not for that picture. However, of course, luck is important. I didn't miss. And you want me to prove it to you? Take a look between Ali's legs. There's a bald photographer named Herb Scharfman. He was the other ringside photographer working for Sports Illustrated that night. He happened to be a great boxing photographer. Herb Scharfman took probably the most famous Rocky Marciano picture. It's a picture of Marciano belting Jersey Joe.
Smashing him in the face.
It's called a rubber face because
Yeah,
it's one of those.
of
And he
course.
took that picture. Well, I don't care how good he was. He was not lucky that night. He's looking up at Ali's rear end, and that's the only picture he's going to get. So luck matters. And the other thing I'll tell you, because we're going to talk about Ali Williams, I know.
Yes.
I'll prove it to you. This picture of Muhammad Ali became as well known as it did because it's young Ali at his best. It's the way people want to remember him. He was drop dead handsome. He was incredible physical specimen. He was a hell of an athlete.
Yeah.
And Sonny Liston was supposed to be invincible, and here he's got Liston laying out.
I have it right behind me. It's beautiful. I won't mess with the camera, but it's.
But my point is, and I'll get to this when we talk about Ali Williams, which, by the way, is right over my shoulder.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
It's the only picture that hangs in my living room. But the reason I prefer this came from my brain. This was not luck. Yes, the knockout is a nice knockout. But if the Clay Liston, Ali Liston, standing over Sonny Liston, had that picture been taken at a preliminary, had it been Paulson